are absolutely the perfect example of more is more. It's always been about going a little further than everybody else would safely go. And it comes, you know, that applies to our instruments, like you're saying, 7-string guitars, 6-string bass, million-piece drum kits, as well as the songwriting. You know, the songs are 8, 10, 12, 20, 40 minutes long. You know, sometimes, you got to take the clock off the wall and you know, let a song just be what it naturally wants to become.
Welcome back, scholars and mathematicians. I do really like Dream Theater, and I know a lot of my fan base that are just pure metalheads are gonna kind of take issue with this video, or a lot of people that just don't like the whole technical prog wanky thing. But I tell you, give this episode and this band a chance. I guarantee you there'll be a couple albums that you could probably really get into. The band was actually formed at Berklee Music College by, of course, Mike Portnoy, which is one of my favorite drummers of all time. He just is the funniest, most interesting dude from the band, and I think he writes the best lyrics, and he's really good at composing some of the songs. And then you have the bassist that's basically a fucking mime how little he talks, Myung, who's this Asian dude that's just always going crazy on the bass and pure silence. Then you have Petrucci. This guy's one of the most diverse guitar players. Sure, he likes to show off his abilities, but he does know when to tone it down. He knows when to craft a good fucking song and a good goddamn solo.
Okay, so I'm pretty much amazing.
So they got one of Petrucci's childhood friends, Kevin Moore, to play keyboards. He's a very diverse, unique player. They made a demo, and honestly, these early songs were alright, but the problem is Charles Collins could kind of hit the notes, but he didn't have like an actual good singing voice. Then they got a much older guy by the name of Charlie Dominici, who was very much like a soul singer, and a lot of people really don't like him and will dismiss the first album because he's on it, and it's the only album that doesn't have James Labrie singing. But honestly, if you really look at it, he is a great singer. He's just really in the wrong place. Then they were threatened with a lawsuit by another band named Majesty, so they changed the name to Dream Theater, which was actually inspired by a name that Mike Portnoy's dad had come up with. Now, Mike Portnoy's family plays a huge role in the lyric writing, as well as big portions of the history of the band, as well as Mike himself. Apparently, the Majesty logo has every single letter of Charlie Dominici's name hidden into it. But nevertheless, they put out their first album, which I think is a really underrated one.
The record deal, our first record deal, came to us. So we signed our first deal, which was with Mechanic Records, and we did When Dream and Day Unite, our first album.
Now this album turns away a lot of Dream Theater fans. A lot of them view it as the absolute worst album. I don't think so at all. Now this is one of the few Dream Theater albums that if you hate the wanky Dream Theater thing, you might actually like this album. Sure, there's a lot of proggy moments on it, but there's a lot of just straight up metal riffage throughout it. They were supposed to have music videos and singles for the song Status Seeker. It's a pretty damn good song, and my favorite song on the album, the riffy as hell, metal as fuck, Afterlife. You also have some very progressive epics on it, of course. The One Who Helped to Set the Sun and The Killing Hand, which is probably the standout of the more progressive songs. But it really showed the limitations of Charlie's voice, where he's trying to hit these high notes and it just kind of goes flat. Now, like I said, the instrumentation is toned down a bit for a lot of these songs, with the exceptions, of course, the epic songs. But they, of course, blow their fucking loads on the instrumental track known as the Yitsy Jam.
Let's clear this up. Yitsy Jam. Most of you figured it out, but for those of you that haven't, we used to be called Majesty. If you took this bass drum head or any other thing that said Yitsy Jam, held it up to the mirror, I wish you could see through this, but if you notice, YTSEJAM, Yitsy Jam.
The record label didn't really do anything with it, so we never toured. We didn't have a lot of support.
They promised to make a video, they promised to put us on tour, and all those promises were just empty promises. Nothing ever happened.
And Charlie's voice was starting to give him problems, especially during the live tour for this album. They split with him and everything was all good, and he came back actually for an anniversary show. So the rest of the four were pretty much in limbo, creating a lot of their early classic songs, which we would hear on the next couple albums. At this time, they were auditioning a bunch of different singers, one of them being one of my all-time favorite singers from Fates Warning, John Arch. And honestly, you would have really fit with this band. Check this out. Then they tried out a guy named Steve Stone that really didn't work. They kept saying, we need a singer like Bruce Dickinson, like Bruce Dickinson. So then he started to literally mimic Bruce Dickinson and said something to the effect of one of the live shows, "Scream for Me Long Beach," which is of course from the whole classic Live After Death thing. But of course they weren't at Long Beach, so I don't know what the hell he was thinking with that. Then they finally got a demo tape from a really shitty band called Winter Rose, and the singer named James Labrie, at the time known as Kevin Labrie, but they had a Kevin Moore and they already had two Johns, so they changed his name to James Labrie.
Pulled out his picture and he had the look we were looking for. Wow, this guy's really good looking too, man. You know, he had a great voice and he looked good. Oh, he must be an asshole, you know. We fly him out, he's a cool guy. He really got along with us.
They flew me down, rehearsed, jammed with them, and that's it. The rest is history.
With this new classic lineup, they weaseled their way out of that shitty label deal. They had no idea what would happen next.
In '92, really all of the bands from the '80s, like Metallica, Maiden, Queensryche, they were starting to stray to more commercial stuff. Metallica was doing the Black Album, Queensryche was doing Empire. So when Images and Words came out in '92, suddenly here we were on a major label, a metal band, but with real prog elements. It was a dream come true. We were playing Boston for the first time, Minneapolis for the first time, Detroit for the first time, Dallas for the first time, Phoenix. You know, we were just everywhere we went, places we never thought we would play. And that was even before the record blew up. Just to get there was awesome. But then all of a sudden, Pull Me Under started to catch on. And when we were doing all those drives in the van, suddenly we would hear Pull Me Under everywhere we went.
Despite this album being a huge success for the band and one of their classic albums, in fact I might even say their best album, the album actually had a lot of turmoil in the studio, especially with the producer David Prater.
The biggest contentious kind of aspect of the album, and I really love the drum sound on the album, but is how Mike felt about his drums being triggered, the snare drum being triggered, and certain sensitive notes, ghost notes and things like that, being translated into full volume notes that weren't. So it's like somebody taking your playing and almost taking the dynamics out of it.
Now in classic Dream Theater fashion, they wanted this album to be like a double album in length. They left out a lot of classic material, including the really good epic song A Change of Seasons, which we'll talk about in a bit. But once again, despite all this studio infighting, this is actually arguably their best album. And if you want to get into Dream Theater, especially with more toned down, I would say start with this album. Although there's a lot of wanky instrumentation, it actually really works the music. The instrumentation is actually very, very, very interesting. Now, everyone knows the single, the opening song, Pull Me Under, which was by happenstance a big hit off the album because college radio was playing it all over the place and everyone really started to catch on to it. All of a sudden, it was blowing up the charts even though it wasn't even a single for the album. So then they quickly had to scramble together a really god-awful music video that makes no sense. And they even scrambled together two other music videos for what were supposed to be singles. You have Another Day, which is kind of like a Christmas sounding song. And then you have the other single, my favorite song on the album, one of their big epic hits. You have Take the Time, which actually has a bit of a Michael Jackson funky influence in there. Now with songs like Take the Time and even the big epics like Learning to Live and of course Metropolis Part 1, Miracle in the Sleeper, the instrumental sections are showing a lot of diversity musically. They're throwing caution to the wind. They're doing all different types of things. And especially on Learning to Live, I mean, you have a Spanish guitar solo, you have a lot of bass lines, and you have that crazy unison at the end, which is probably the best part of the whole album. What's funny is the title, Metropolis Part 1, Miracle in the Sleep, was actually meant as a joke. They never intended it actually following it up, but everyone kept asking about it, and they eventually did follow it up. Now the last song I do want to mention is another one of my favorite songs of the album, Under a Glass Moon, not only just because it's amazing riffs, great songwriting, incredible singing from James, and that's right, from this era, James was one of the best metal fucking singers. Sadly, that would change. I mostly want to feature the song because of John Petrucci's guitar solo. It's arguably his best of all time because he goes from shred to jazz to blues to classical, all without breaking a sweat and all without the listener noticing that it sounds jarring at all. It actually flows perfectly. It really shows the musical diversity of John Petrucci. Now this album exploded while the band was on tour, so they had to keep rushing in, making music videos and going back on tour and shit. And they were doing a huge world tour at this point. But this album pretty much put them in a difficult situation because Pull Me Under was an accidental hit. And they didn't want that to represent them. And the whole album, Images and Words, although there's some songs that kind of run together a little bit because they're more metal oriented with some progressive elements, they still threw caution to the wind. A lot of the songs were really different. They decided to do something completely outside of the box.
So it's the first time we ever had to write an album with a clock ticking and knowing that there was a fan base waiting to hear it.
これからも日本で頑張ってください。期待してます。
Said I don't like Dream Theater that much, but I had a pen and some paper, so what the fuck.
Now, where Images and Words was super diverse, this one is probably even more diverse, completely black to white. You have motherfucking heavy as hell moments, throwing in a lot of heavy alternative metal influences, and then you have really, really melodic, soft moments that are way softer than anything on Images and Words, and arguably softer than anything they've ever done. So because of this, it's actually hard for me to recommend this album because it's just so fucking black and white. But if you really like the experimentation side of this band, you'll really like this album. And if you like the more stripped down approach, you might actually like a lot of this album. Kevin Moore was very distant with the band, and they just kind of weren't getting along with him. He wasn't really contributing as much. He definitely killed it on this album, but you could see that there was going to be some problems ahead.
Kev was kind of growing distant to us personally, and musically he was more interested in the independence of working on his own as opposed to the compromising involved in a band environment.
Way with you. He also really did not like the fame. He didn't like the attention. He just seems like a very reclusive person that doesn't want to stay in a group for that long. I mean, you could kind of see that the seeds were planted even from the beginning with lyrics like Light Fuse and Get Away. And even some of the lyrics on this album are about this whole falling out. But what I find very odd is that Kevin Moore had always said he left because he didn't like the musical direction. Which is weird because he would then, almost immediately after, join Fate's Warning and continue playing prog metal. 6 O'Clock, which I said lyrically is about his falling out with the band. Now this song, as well as a bunch of other songs, actually showcase a unique vocal approach from James Labrie, trying to not repeat himself like he did in the last album, and instead do something more visceral and more harsh.
So many ways to drown a man, so many ways to drag him down. Some are fighting, some take years and years.
The song Mirror is really important because this is the first time that Mike Portnoy was lyrically talking about his struggle with alcoholism, which would come up a lot more later. Mirror and Lie. Now, these were supposed to be one song, one big epic song, but James Labrie said that Lie should be its own song. They pretty much made that like the single and everything, and that was a real groovy, heavy song, kind of inspired by like alternative metal and Pantera type stuff. Then you have the really weird A Mind Beside Itself trilogy. Now, you could tell that they were having frustrations with the label. They didn't want to try to argue to put another 20-minute song there, so they thought, let's put like almost a hidden 20-minute song. Let's take 3 songs that go together, but break them all apart. You have an instrumental that really crazy and long. It has tons of wanky stuff. Then you have an epic song called Voices, which is probably my favorite song on the album, mostly due not only to the epic arrangements, the amazing keyboard playing, but my favorite thing about the song is James Labrie's incredible fucking singing. And then you cap the three-piece song out with, of course, The Silent Man, which is another single. You got a guy named Derek Sherinian to join on the tour, and then eventually joined the band for a short while. Now, I used to hate Derek, not as a person, of course, but as a musician, but honestly, I think he's one of the more unique members of the band. He's this much more throw caution to the wind raw player that was a lot less focused on wanky instrumentation and much more on like really good songwriting, really good riffs. Now, as many Dream Theater fans know, this tour brought on the infamous incident with James Labrie and his food poisoning. He had horribly vomited several times. His voice obviously was struggling on the tour after that, so you could tell something had happened. But it's not like the voice had fully recovered. I always noticed it just kind of remained a little more flat from that point on. And then it's only in recent times that it's really gone way downhill. Now, also at this time, there was a lot of bootlegs going around of live performances and demos of a Change of Season song, which was supposed to end up on Images and Words. So the band was almost kind of forced to record a new version of the song, finally put it out. And in Dream Theater fashion, they could just put out one fucking song on an EP. They had to make the EP like 50 goddamn minutes. Now this song, bringing it back to the whole Mike Portnoy's family thing, is a very emotional song about Mike's mom dying, the last time he spoke to her and all this stuff. And there's a lot of, you know, cool sound bites brought in from one of my favorite movies, Dead Poet Society. I will admit that the new chorus is a lot better, because the original chorus is just these weird straining high notes that kind of didn't make any sense. But what really matters to me is the apex of the song, the climax, the guitar solo from John Petrucci, and the unison, which is completely butchered in the redone version. You can tell that Kevin Moore had wrote those parts. The original guitar solo from John Petrucci was much more inspired by the guitar solo of La Villa Strangiata by Rush, where it just kind of kept building up, getting more intense. And then right when it hit that point, the breaking point, version with Derek Sherinian, it just feels really lazy. A lot of people think this is John's best guitar solo, but it just kind of meanders. It doesn't really have a good flow. It doesn't have a good apex, not nearly as much as the original version. Now, the band was working on tons of material at this time, lots of experimentation, incorporating some sounds at the time, and they wrote, once again, a fucking double album in length of material, tons of songs that would eventually be left off due to studio interference. In fact, they even wrote a damn near 20-minute song called Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from Memory, which never actually got vocal treatment, it was just demoed. This was probably the most drama that had ever happened in the studio of the band.
All the people that were there at the label when we did Images and Words in Awake were now gone, and all these new people that were ready to move on to the next fad, whatever was popular in 97, 96, 97. It was another period in the band that we almost gave in, threw in the towel. And we started to wonder, maybe Pull Me Under was a fluke. Maybe we are a one-hit wonder. Maybe that was our 15 minutes, you know? And we went out and we started playing some local shows just to get out there and play. And we invited some of these new label people out to feel that love. And I think that's when they said, hey, you know, let's get these guys back in the studio and do another one.
Now, Falling Into Infinity, which I think is a really underrated album. A lot of people really hate it because it's kind of more radio friendly. And other than throwing out a bunch of songs that they wanted to be on the album to make sure it wasn't a double album, like I said, the studio did interfere a lot during the writing process. Originally, Burning My Soul was supposed to be much longer, and they completely removed the instrumental section and made it its own song called Hell's Kitchen. In fact, Mike actually makes references to a lot of the turmoil going on with the band, the studio, and the music business in general, with the really underrated killer song called Just Let Me Breathe. which actually has a lot of callbacks to other classic rock songs, as well as references to Kurt No Brain blowing his brains out. It also makes references to his distaste of MTV, but in the song he refers to it as MTV, you know, like not MT, but empty. Like this, see, this is empty, MTV, you get it? Do you get it? Now the label ordered famed pop songwriter known as Desmond Child to come in and help the band, which I know of from Kiss, but of course all you other fucking snobs are gonna be like, well, he did all these other things. I don't care. Anyway, so Desmond Child came in to help rewrite some of the songs. Most notably, he took a song called You or Me and turned it into You Not Me and completely rewrote the song and changed it or whatever. Honestly, a lot of people complain how the original is way better. I actually kind of like the Desmond Child version a lot more. What really pisses me off, makes no fucking sense, is why this wasn't made the fucking music video, okay? What was the point of bringing in Desmond Child if you're just gonna make Hollow Years, the boring fucking song, the stupid music video? Oh, we're driving around in a car, that's so exciting. You Not Me was at least catchy. It was at least kind of 90s, so like people would have maybe liked it if it was put on the radio, if it had a fucking music video that was a NyQuil. I think that Lines in the Sand is by far the standout. In fact, Derek Sherinian actually was very instrumental, no pun intended, to the creation of this song.
It was the first thing that I started playing in rehearsals, and Portnoy heard it right away and thought it was great. He goes, "What is that? What is that?" And we started working it out, and it all started off with this riff.
The band was kind of going down the tubes. Critically, they were flopping. Sales, the tours was not going as well. So Mike actually threatened to leave the band. The band convinced him to stay, but on one condition, that he could shake the tree and pretty much be the leader of the band. But he did shake the tree, and down came Derek Sherinian. Now, they fired him over conference call, which was kind of shitty, but they really wanted Jordan Rudess in the band.
We first met Jordan after Kevin left the band, and we were auditioning keyboard players, and we auditioned Jordan, and he blew us away.
It wasn't a good time to join Dream Theater at that point. But we remained in touch.
Me and John Petrucci ended up doing a side project called the Liquid Tension Experiment. So I invited Jordan to be a part of this project, and then the great Tony Levin on bass.
You know, if we approached you, you know, what would you say, you know, about joining the group again? And I was like, well, you know what? At this point, it could work.
And now here he is, an official new member of Dream Theater, Mr. Jordan Rudess.
Now, a lot of people either love Jordan and think he's like the best keyboard player ever. I think he's definitely, arguably, objectively one of the best. I understand Kevin Moore had better tone and all that stuff, maybe even had better soul, but just to throw out Jordan because sometimes he gets wanky, I mean, come on. He writes so many creative things to begin with. I mean, look at 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. That was pretty much his baby. So get the fuck out of here with that shit. Jordan is a great, important player in the band. And this, to me, is the classic lineup objectively. I mean, sales went through the roof, critical acclaim went through the roof with this lineup. And then once again, thanks to Mike, not anyone else, he shook the tree again and demanded from now on that no studio interference with the band will ever happen, that the band will produce their own albums, and that we'll have other people mix it, but they are in control of their own product. The label agreed, and they went back to Bear Track Studios, which is the place that they actually recorded Images and Words at. And then they took that epic song that was left off, Metropolis Part 2, and they decided, let's split this off into more songs, add more things to it. And from there, they decided to make a full, balls-to-the-wall concept album that turned out to be a landmark in progressive metal.
We went in and began this next chapter in Dream Theater history, free of the powers that be and just completely independent, with a whole new gusto for making the best album we possibly can and proving everybody wrong.
Now this album definitely saved the band for sure. There was a lot more morale, there was a lot more creativity, they were inspired beyond hell. I mean, just watch the behind the scenes of making this album, they're all happy. It didn't sell that well, but it was very big critically. A lot of the critics praised it, the fans were beyond happy. A lot of the songs don't stand up on their own weight. Obviously you have heavy hitters like Strange Deja Vu and Home and whatnot, but there's some songs on here that just don't go well by themselves, and you kind of have to listen to it in the full album context. So once I put it under heavy scrutiny, you just kind of go like, eh. The story goes something like this. This guy named Nicholas is put under by some fucking hypnagogic therapist, or whatever the fuck it's called, and he actually is sent back in time. And he learns that a girl named Victoria was murdered, and he's investigating her death, almost like a noir story, right? Now already there's a huge problem. There's not that much going on. I mean, he learns who murdered her. It was like her ex-boyfriend or something like that, because she was sleeping around. So he murdered the two of them, right? And then he goes back. So there's not that much going on here story-wise. The problem is that they fucking stretch it out for how many goddamn songs, and you just hear over and over and over, Victoria's dead, Victoria's dead, Victoria's dead. We get it. You can't make 70 minutes of a story of something that you could probably just have condensed in that 20-minute original song. It just feels stretched out beyond belief. I could see why a lot of the stronger songs were songs that were originally written for that 20-minute song. The Nick comes out, his hypnagogic whatever the fuck, and then he goes back home and realizes, you know what, I'm happy, I'm gonna turn my life around, I'm gonna get back with my girl or whatever. And I don't know, it's not that interesting because none of this was ever discussed earlier, so whatever. And then the ending is Nick sleeping, and then the hypnagogic therapist guy walks into his house with a gun, says, "Open your eyes, Nicholas," and shoots him. Now some people think this is cool because, oh my god, what a twist, right? But if you look at it in the lens of a movie, this doesn't make any fucking sense, because if he was just gonna kill him, because another twist, he was actually the reincarnation of the murderer in the past, and Nick is a reincarnation of Victoria, and that he was meant to kill Nick, just like the one guy killed Victoria, then why the fuck did he not just kill him when he put him under at the beginning of the goddamn story? It doesn't make any fucking sense. But anyways, back to the music and not the stupid story. Hopefully, I've opened your eyes, Nicholas. The story's not that fucking good. It's kind of stupid. Now, even though I do like it, and it's considered one of the best albums from them, I do have to give you a warning to new fans, though, is that I would not recommend this as a starter album at all. It's kind of wanky. In fact, this album actually contains their probably most wanky song of all time, their instrumental, The Dance of Eternity, which has like hundreds of fucking time changes.
Walk with us, if you will, through the nightmare which we call the Dance of Eternity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, like I said, I love the strong moments, Strange Deja Vu. I fucking love Home, even though Home kind of sounds a lot like 46 and 2 by Tool. And then some of my more favorite moments are the more soft, stripped down moments, like One Last Time, and The Spirit Carries On, which is a really good song that's clearly inspired by Pink Floyd. It has like a great epic chorus at the end. Now what else is cool is that they did a lengthy tour for the album, and they did a really cool live video with tons of effects, cool actors. They even have orchestration and choirs, known as Scenes from New York, where they play the whole album. What's really controversial, though, is that the original cover for the album featured a burning New York skyline, and as you can see, the Twin Towers. What made it more controversial is the fucking release date. This album was released on September 11th, 2001. So they immediately pulled it from store shelves and did a completely different cover and all. I guess Dream Theater did 9/11. Anyways, even though it's not one of my favorites, it's still a classic album. This is truly the beginning of the golden era.
We're on the last two lines of this fucking song, and we're gonna get it.
Should it go up high like that, or should it be like when you go? Ah, nah, it's like too strainy. It's like fucking straining macaroni.
Okay, so I'll sing it clean for you.
Okay.
I think that singing it clean. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna say a f***ing thing.
Hey James, I don't want to tell you now, but you're singing the wrong words.
Six Degrees of Inner Turbulence is actually what got me into the band. To me, it's very diverse, it's a lot more creative. It feels probably just as creative as like Images and Words in a way. It's only 6 songs, but the second half of the album, which is pretty much one song broken up into multiple parts, is like a huge song. It's like a conceptual whole side of an album. Now the first song on the first half of the album is called The Glass Prison, which is a really long, epic song that immediately really got me into the band. It's got great riffs, and this is the beginning of Mike Portnoy's 12-Step Suite, a multiple song thing across many albums that talks about his dealing with alcoholism.
I indulged way too much. I've always been an obsessive compulsive person, could never do anything in moderation.
Another really interesting thing about the song though is that it starts where Finally Free, the last song on Metropolis Part 2 ended. It ended with the gunshot going to static. This album starts at static and goes to Glass Prison. This whole next run of albums would basically do that. You got Misunderstood, a really catchy, melodic song. There's a guitar solo in it where John Petrucci took inspiration from George Harrison, where he played a guitar solo forward, then played it backwards, learned how to play it backwards and the feel and everything, recorded that, and then played it reverse of that. So it sounds all wonky and weird. It's pretty cool. Then you have, of course, the 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, the reason we're all here, right? Arguably their best fucking song, one of the best prog epics of all time, broken into multiple parts. You have a song that starts it called The Overture, which is an instrumental thing that Jordan wrote that pretty much created the whole rest of the album. He took snippets from each part of the overture and created each song with it. And this overture is very orchestral. You could tell that Jordan put tons of fucking hours into it. Now, when the lyrics come in, it starts with a section called About to Crash, which details the story of a girl that has bipolar disorder and her family kind of doesn't know what to do and she's not getting along with people. Really, really great songs. Then you have War Inside My Head, when shit gets really heavy. A real dark song about PTSD and the Vietnam War. And that goes into the Test That Stumped Them All, a crazy schizophrenic song about schizophrenia. This is easily the wankiest part of the song, but it kind of makes sense with the subject matter. Even the vocals are fucking crazy. Then you get a double dose of my favorite parts of the song in the middle of it. The softer part, which used to be my least favorite, but now I really like it. It's very emotional, it's dark. A lot of people laugh at it because of the line James says, "I'm just a poor girl." It's a song about a girl with depression. And then as the song goes along, you learn why she had depression. She was supposed to have a baby, but the doctors had killed her baby or something to that effect. It's really dark, and I love how the guitar solo at the end of it really kind of details that. It's at first this melodic, hopeful part, and then right as you hear the audio of the doctors killing the baby, all of a sudden it switches to dark, bluesy evil. And it's a really, really great fucking guitar solo that really shows how good of songwriters they are. This whole fucking song does. And then you have Solitary Shell. Now, Solitary Shell is a song about a person with autism, Asperger's, whatever. You know, in all seriousness, let's be serious for a second here, guys. This whole section means a lot to me personally because I actually do have an older brother that has autism. Sometimes it's hard for me to understand him, sometimes it's hard for even the rest of the family, some friends. And this song really does explain perfectly what it's like to have that. You know, you're basically in a solitary shell. You really want them to break out of it, but they can't. They're born in the solitary shell. Then you have the last part of it, Losing Time, which many think is about dementia, but the band actually points to this song being about multiple personality disorder. I don't know what the fuck it has to do with Losing Time. This song is truly magnificent, okay? I've shown this to people that don't like Dream Theater. I think they're way too wanky, don't like metal, that don't like prog, everything. This song, this whole epic song, even if it's just parts of it, there's something of this song for everyone. It truly does connect to people of all different ages, of different backgrounds, everything. If you want to get into Dream Theater, if you want to get into this kind of music, you really should not even start with an album. Start with this multiple part song. There was a rumor that James Labrie was threatened by Mike Portnoy that he was going to fire him from the band if he did not lose weight, if he did not get his singing act in order, because he was kind of singing like pure shit around this time and kind of not giving it his all, which is kind of a believable theory because he did all of a sudden lose a lot of weight for the next album and was singing a lot better and putting a lot more effort into it. Now the next album took a big musical risk, changed the formula up once again, this time for a much darker sound.
I want to hear music that has balls and chunk. I love progressive music. I love listening to Yes and Pink Floyd and Genesis, but at the end of the day, I want to just crank up something loud and fucking headbang.
It used to be my all-time favorite Dream Theater album, but I have to admit that it does have some problems, despite it being one of the albums in the classic era. The problem is that it incorporates a lot of groove metal and nu metal elements. There's songs like Honor Thy Father where there's literal fucking rapping going on. There's Jump the Fuck Up riffs, bonga 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 bonga. The song As I Am is pretty good. It's considered a classic, but it's very groove metal, very like Pantera inspired. Some people say it sounds like Metallica. This one's inspired by John Petrucci having a problem with the guitar player of Queensryche at the time, Mike Stone. When they were on tour, Mike kept constantly bugging Petrucci about, here's a better way of playing the guitar and shit. And Mike Stone's a shit guitar player. John Petrucci was kind of pissed about that and wrote the lyrics to this.
I won't change the picture, man. Take me as I am. As I am.
And you also have this Dying Soul, which we talked about, which is the second part in this 12-step suite. Then you have Instrumental Stream of Consciousness, which is pretty wanky. This whole album is actually very wanky, so those that don't like that Dream Theater, stay clear away from this shit. But I will say what's really cool is that the instrumental actually starts with a separate song. It kind of bleeds into it called Vacant, which is very sad, very melodic. And this is a song that's lyrics written by James Labrie, and it's about his daughter that was in a coma at the time, and they weren't sure if she was going to wake up. So very, very good song. I actually like it more than Stream of Consciousness. Then you have the song The Name of God, which is probably my favorite song on the album, the ending epic. But you can tell this song is very clearly lyrically inspired by the events of 9/11. My favorite part is the kind of wanky unison section towards the end of the song. A lot of people will hate that because it's just type shit. But you know, honestly, this is probably the craziest fucking unison they've ever done.
We're all on steroids.
What kind of steroids?
You know, finger steroids.
Take us to Flavortown, Guy Fieri.
A lot of people either say it's the best album or the fucking worst album. Then you have another album in the classic era that is much more of a return to like prog rock elements as well as some metal stuff.
We decided when it came to Octavarium that it was time again to kind of get back to our roots, if you will, and get back to the stylistic things that each guy in the band could bring to the table, and really go for a Dream Theater album that was a little bit more open to that.
Yeah, if somebody wanted to say, what is Dream Theater about? Play this CD, and you get it. everything is centered around 8. It's called Octavarium. It's our 8th studio album. There are 8 songs. There are 8 keys that create an octave.
I could see where maybe some people wouldn't like some of the songs in here because their influences really start to show in here, especially Mike's influences with the song I Walk Beside You, which is clearly inspired by U2. And then you have kind of an angrier song called Never Enough, which is very much inspired by Muse. There's a couple other Dream Theater songs that sound like Muse. And this one is about Mike Portnoy's anger and frustration with the fans because it's just never enough. They're always mad about something. The album opens really well with a heavy killer epic, The Root of All Evil. There's another part of the 12-step suite. And then you have another heavy killer song, Panic Attack, which was actually the very first song I ever heard from the band. Always loved the song. It always drew me back to this album, even when I was kind of on and off with this one. So you have 2 epics towards the end. You have Sacrificed Son, one of the best and most emotional songs they've ever done. It took them years and years and years to fully articulate a good song lyrically about the 9/11 terror attack. But what's weird is that James Labrie is the one that wrote the lyrics, which doesn't make any fucking sense because he's Canadian. It's kind of weird to think the American-born members of the band, especially the New York natives of the band, would have been more inclined to write the lyrics. Title track, the greatest prog suite of all fucking time, greatest song ever made. You guys know me, right? I always make jokes like, this is my favorite band, this is my favorite band, this is my favorite album. I just fuck around with you guys. But when people ask me what is the greatest song of all time, I always point to this song. There's not much to be said musically about it because it's just an experience. It's a building experience. Each part transitions to the next perfectly. The beginning of it's very inspired by the Pink Floyd epic classic Shine On You Crazy Dying with the synthesizer buildup. Tons of references in the middle of the song to other classic rock songs like Supper's Ready and whatnot. John Petrucci's amazing melodic guitar solo that ends it, one of his most passionate solos ever. But I always love like the heavy buildup to the end where it gets dark and brooding and James kind of sounds like Dave Mustaine. That's the best part of the song for me. Now this album is kind of the end of the golden era for most people. It's kind of the end of an era for the band. They did an awesome live DVD and album called Score. They got a whole orchestra to come in and they did an amazing version of 6 Degrees finally that gets a full treatment. And they even did a really good documentary on it as well called The Score So Far, which you guys should watch. Then the band signed a new record deal with Roadrunner after taking a really short break. And now they're going to make 2 more albums with this lineup.
It's always been about controlled chaos, kind of like meticulous but abstract at the same time, you know. So it seemed like a fitting name for the album, as you know, it's a fitting description of the band in general.
Incoming! 4!
As much as I feel Metropolis is kind of overrated, I've always felt Systematic Chaos was pretty fucking underrated. I enjoy every song on it, I really do. I fucking love the songs, and they've grown on me even more over time. There are some little problems with it, like Mike Portnoy and John Petrucci were doing a lot more gang vocals on this and the next album. A lot of people don't like that. There's some really cool songs in here. Constant Motion, which is a really cool riffy song. I used to not like it because of Mike's vocals on it, but it is a really good song. I had a music video, which they haven't done since fucking Stupid Hollow years. That's really nice. It gets them more attention again. And this song's about Mike Portnoy constantly doing several different projects because he's fucking crazy. Now my favorite song in here has got to be one that used to be my all-time least favorite song here. It's their heaviest song they ever made, probably their darkest song. And what really caught my attention was the crazy instrumental middle section. It is really creative and all over the place. The Dark Eternal Night.
The Dark Eternal Night is it's really a song about a monster.
To all you gay sayers out there that say this album is very wanky in all places, there's still some moments where they strip it down. Forsaken's really good, but then really the stripped down song here is Repentance. Kind of a longer song that's really mellow the whole time. A lot of build-ups, a lot of choruses, a lot of choirs. And what's really unique about this one, which is another part of the 12-step suite, the real soft part of it, is that Mike Portnoy got a bunch of really famous metal rock musicians who do little spoken word bits throughout the song of them talking about things that they regretted in their lives, which is really cool. My favorite part is at the very end when Dave Ellefson says,
"Not only the sick will see but the truth shall set us free."
what's really special about this album is the opening and ending tracks. Just like Shine On You Crazy Diamond from Pink Floyd, where they had the song split up in two halves, this huge epic. Begin the album and end the album with it. They did this within the presence of enemies. A really dark and probably the most underrated suite that they've ever done.
Don't bother trying to find them. They will be coming to you. Fight and destroy until you can't take anymore.
I feel that this one and the next one are actually some of my all-time favorites, especially the next one.
Once me and John started getting the lyrics together, we started to see a common thread in what we were writing about, which were these dark, heavy situations, you know, dealing with death and recovery from addiction and, you know, near fatal accidents and all these kind of negative, dark situations. And that's kind of where I thought of the album title, you know, because there's an expression, every cloud has a silver lining, meaning any bad situation you're in, you know, something positive can come out of it.
Of all their albums, this one has probably grown the most with each listen. I feel might be their best one overall, but I can't pick a favorite. I'll be honest with you guys. There's too many really fucking good albums from them, but this one is a really, really great, consistent one. The songs are strong. It's a bit more stripped down. Got a great opening epic, A Nightmare to Remember, which talks about John Petrucci being in a car accident. Has a great melodic middle section. Has some weird Mike Portnoy vocals. It even has a blast beat in there. To me, the second side is the best, with three amazing epics, one after the other. The ending of the 12-step suite, you have, of course, the Shattered Fortress, arguably the best part of it all. I know a lot of people say this is the worst part. I don't know why. All the new sections are amazing, and all the reprises from past sections feel very perfectly interwoven. I love how it ends with the beginning of the glass prison. Fucking awesome.
You're smart enough for me to trust. Live your life now. Just keep these steps in your life.
Of course, you have the fan favorite Count of Tuscany. I think it's kind of overrated compared to some of these other epics, though. But to me, the standout song is the most emotional one on here. Kind of a Rush-inspired song, especially in the first half. But to me, it stands out all on its own in the second half. You have a song that is a big tribute to the person that even thought of the band name. Mike Portnoy's dad was dying at the time from cancer, and Mike wrote the song as a dedication to him lyrically. In fact, he even sung it to him before he died. You'd believe, honestly, with John Petrucci's amazing guitar solo at the end, which is one of his most emotional ever, that you'd think that it was his dad that had just died. And they did some promotional things and toured for the album, but they didn't really do any live DVDs or anything like that, which was kind of weird. It felt like the band was slowing down. And just like Shattered Fortress and Best of Times kind of doing a tribute to Mike's dad, this was kind of the end of an era.
I guess when you've been doing it this long, it can become kind of stale at times.
Mike said, hey, before you guys get into this, I got some things I have to say. so he basically told us that he wanted Dream Theater to go like on a hiatus and come back 5 years later and have a glorious reunion. And I think it was about then that our jaws kind of hit the floor.
I defend his right to take a break and whatnot, and I could see where he thinks the band should definitely kind of reconvene and maybe start fresh again. And in that sense, he's right. But I could see where the other guys are coming from, where they were pissed about it. And they're like, hey, that's like if your boss just kind of laid you off and said, yeah, we'll add you back when we need you. And I think, honestly, that the rest of the members would have kind of agreed to this and had taken a break if it wasn't for the fact that Mike had then immediately begun on other projects and had quickly joined Avenged Sevenfold, or as I like to call them, Avenged Pigeonhole. But once again, I can kind of also see where Mike was coming from, because he wanted to take a break, but then the drummer of Avenged Sevenfold, the Rev, had died, and the band really needed a drummer at the time, so they thought, let's get the Rev's biggest inspiration, Mike Portnoy, to drum for them. But there's kind of no way he could say no. I mean, Jordan Rudess had apparently originally cried when Mike left, but there were some other members in the band that seemed like they were a little bit more happy when Mike the Bluebeard Pirate had left. People like James Labrie that has since said that there's no way Mike Portnoy will ever come back, and he hasn't really talked to him since, and it really seemed like there was a big rift between them. They made a weird documentary called The Spirit Carries On, where they auditioned a bunch of drummers. But I always felt that this documentary was stupid because they kind of knew who they wanted from the beginning. They knew they wanted Mike Mangini.
But at the same time, I have to point out the fact that although he may have been a little too involved, Mike Portnoy is the reason Dream Theater got to where they were.
You know, you hear the stories about how Lars Ulrich kind of got Metallica started, and it was very similar to the way that I got Dream Theater started, was just making connections, sending tapes to everyone.
And not only that, remember, Mike Portnoy was the one that caused the band to get back on track, created the golden years of the band, and he made sure the band was a massive force in progressive metal and not just Pull Me Under and then forgotten.
I did not want to compromise. I wanted to stick to our guns and continue with the 12-minute songs. Some of the other guys were feeling the frustration and the temptation from the industry to maybe try things their way. And I had had enough. I said, fuck this. This is no longer about the music. This is about the business and the industry, and this isn't fun anymore. I told them my frustrations and I had had enough, and basically laid down the law. Said, if this band is gonna stay together, the label has to stay the fuck out of our music. We don't want to work with outside producers anymore, no outside writers. The label will hear the album when it's finished. We're not going to them for permission on what is a hit single. They gotta, if this band's gonna stay together, if this band is gonna survive, everybody get out of our way, book the studio time, and let us make our fucking record.
Now, another thing we have to quickly talk about is, since this, James has pretty much lost his voice completely. It's gotten really bad ever since like the Black Clouds and Silver Linings tour. Honestly, James Labrie's the kind of voice that would maybe repair a little bit more over time if it's given a break, and Dream Theater's just overworking him. But whether you like it or not, from this point on until maybe even a change in the future, it's the Mike Mangini era of the band. So let's get on to the albums and stop with the bitching.
This isn't what we wanted. We never expected this, and now here we are. And you know, change happens. It might not be what we want or expect.
But I think, you know, all of us really felt strongly about, you know, we got to continue doing what we love and working together. There was no like stopping us.
Now, the title of Dramatic Turn of Events is a reference towards the conflicts going on in the Middle East, but I've always still thought that the title had a little bit to do with the whole Mike Portnoy leaving thing. I'll be honest, this album made me and every other fan that doubted that they could follow up the departure of Mike Portnoy eat our words. Some people still refuse to listen to it and hate it, but I'll be fucking honest. Good music is good music. Although this album is still very Dream Theater, you could argue that it's a little too Dream Theater. In fact, many have gone to say that this album is pretty much just Images and Words Part 2. In fact, Mike Portnoy even called the album Desperate because of that. On the Backs of Angels is basically just another Pull Me Under. It just feels like it's very much mimicking how that song flowed. And then Breaking All Illusions, once again, very much feels like it's mimicking Learning to Live. But to be fair, these songs do add enough new elements. They're still really, really good songs on their own, especially Breaking All Illusions. What's really weird about this material, though, is that after they had hired Mangini to be part of the band, they wrote all of it without him and then tracked all the drums on like a drum machine. And then they had Mike come and see what he could do with it. That's really weird to me. They tried to say something effective. We wanted to see how the rest of us could still write music without anyone else. But it's like, he's a new member of the band. Let him write shit, you fucking weirdos. To be honest, the drumming is really good, but you would never have noticed that Mike Portnoy wasn't there unless I had told you. There are a lot of great epic songs on here, some boring ballads for the most part, but my favorite song would of course be Lost Not Forgotten. Now the album was pretty damn good, but this is kind of retreading old ground. They really need to prove themselves at the next one.
Since him joining the band and recording A Dramatic Turn of Events, one of the things that our fans were looking forward to the most about this record was what were we going to sound like with Mike being involved in the creative process.
Sorry guys, but this is one of my absolute least favorite Dream Theater albums, arguably even their worst. It's not that I hate it, it's not that I don't think it's good, it's just most of it in the middle is just kind of, I can do without it. I never really ever listened to it that much. It's all just kind of playing, the music's playing, the title's playing, the album cover's even fucking playing. Experimental in places like it should have been, but even those moments kind of feel half-baked. And a lot of it feels like unfinished B-sides from the last album, songs that weren't good enough to be on Dramatic Turn of Events. In fact, some of the songs that are trying to experiment don't even really sound like Dream Theater, which would be a good thing, except they sound like Rush. This time they brought the drums and vocals really high up in the mix, and the vocals are kind of, and the effects they put on them are not that great either. What really bugs me is the weird, muddy, shitty guitar tone, and what's the worst thing about it is the drums. Now, Mangini's drumming is fine. Kind of robotic, but it's fine. But the fucking sound of it is beyond horrible. It's some of the worst overproduced drums I've ever heard. Its saving grace, though, is that it really opens and ends with really strong songs. One of them being the opening killer single with a music video called The Enemy Inside, which is actually a song based on soldiers with PTSD. The music video is great.
I had nightmares about reoccurring events, not the actual event, but how I could recreate it and do things differently.
I don't think people took my cry for help seriously. You lose a piece of your soul out there. Who can come back and try to live their lives like nothing happened?
Then, when you think that's strong, they end it with a song that is beyond amazing. Another incredible suite. And this one is one of their best by far, even though the vocals are kind of, and the production is terrible. The riffs are amazing, and there's some amazing orchestration throughout it. Not just keyboards, we're talking actual orchestras. In fact, the middle of the song goes dead silent to allow for an entire orchestral piece.
Dream Theater's had a long career.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of different things. This is what we're going to do now.
So the Astonishing, or the Astonishing, although it's probably the last one I've listened to from the band, and I will continue to listen to the least, I've recently looked through it in a different set of lenses. Quite literally, as you can see. Of course, Dream Theater should be delivering us progressive metal albums, but they did decide to do something different with it. So for the Astonishing, let's kind of do like a pros and cons thing. I can show you kind of why I'm in the middle with this album nowadays. So the first thing is, of course, they did something completely different. The last couple albums, they were, especially Dramatic Turn of Events, repeating the same thing. And self-titled Dream Theater, they tried to do things different, but it just wasn't working. It still felt tired. This one, they did something completely different. You couldn't even compare this to any album they'd ever done. The only thing about it that's comparable is that it still has that weird production style from the self-titled, although the guitars don't sound as bad, the drums still sound pretty terrible. A lot of people, when this first came out, thought this should definitely be some sort of concept album, more like Scenes from a Memory. But it's not that. That's kind of the different lens I'm looking at it through now, is that this is actually more so designed as a soundtrack type album for a movie or story that's never really been done, which is pretty different. And all the music more so follows like a Broadway style. Most of it's pretty stripped down. That's another thing. To people that hate Dream Theater for what they are, this is the absolute least wankiest album. I'm sure there's a couple songs, like I said, here and there for what they're trying to do. A more symphonic type fucking soundtrack Broadway piece all the way through. It's actually pretty damn good for what it is, and although it's very ballad focused, it is, if you look at each individual song, it's actually pretty damn good. If you listen to this album front to back, which I would actually, although it's meant to be some sort of soundtrack, I would actually argue do not listen to it that way. I would listen to it in pieces, or else it becomes fucking tiring. The reason it becomes tiring is because the fucking album is damn near 2 hours, maybe even 2.5 hours. It is absolutely fucking endless. Not even a movie, like a Disney movie, like The Little Mermaid or something, would have the movie as long as this fucking soundtrack. The biggest problem is that they should have cut this down to maybe an hour in length. The story's okay. It's, I think, maybe better than Scenes from a Memory because it's not as stupid. It's more convoluted and lengthy, has more characters. But it has too many characters. Cut some of them out, streamline the story, and another problem with the story is that it's kind of a ripoff of 2112, but it has a beginning, middle, and end, and you could argue that the story kind of deserves to be long this time around. Another problem with it being completely stretched out forever is that there's tons and tons and tons of reprises, which I don't have a problem with, except for the fact that with 2.5 hours in length, you're thinking, do we really need to hear this theme again? Do we really need to hear a song that was literally just a repeat of one of the other songs earlier again? And I still think as a Dream Theater album, it's terrible. But like I said, as a soundtrack, it's not too bad, but it is so dauntingly long. They couldn't even fit this entire fucking album on the road. So you knew that that was already a problem, that this album was too goddamn long. They tried to play the whole thing and fucking couldn't. They literally had to grab iPads to sight read music song for song because there's no way in hell they could memorize all this. It was just too fucking much. Now my favorite song on the album has to be the incredibly Disney sounding song, Our New World. My biggest problem with the song though is that it has a guest vocal appearance from Lizzie Hale, a singer from a band called Hailstorm, a band that people only like because the singer a girl, but it's a good song nonetheless. And instead of moving on to something else, maybe even correcting the mistakes right away, they instead decided to do an anniversary tour of Images and Words. Number one, James's voice cannot handle these songs. The smart thing to do would be for James to maybe sing them fucking differently. The good news though is that Dream Theater did try to correct the mistake that many saw as the Astonishing, going back to an actual progressive metal sound, maybe incorporate some sounds of old, some sounds of new, and the biggest cherry on top, write something that is short.
Before we went in to start writing, we definitely talked about having an album that was like in the hour runtime mark, which is kind of a challenge because we tend to write longer songs. We tend to always have so much material. But we thought having something that you could listen to in one sitting, you know, at the gym or in a car drive or on the train or something would be great for a change. And we haven't done that since Images and Words.
this is one of those rare moments that once again I'd recommend to a Dream Theater fan that wants what Dream Theater is, but in a more toned down style. I would say go for this one. Honestly, I'd say that maybe this is better than Dramatic Turn of Events, and quite possibly the best album they've done since Black Clouds and Silver Linings. And it's different, and it's streamlined, and it's stripped down in places, and it's not as wanky, and it's creative, it's different, it brings back just enough of old, and it's short. The first single we were given was the first track on the album, Untethered Angels, which a lot of people were complaining about as it was generic and whatnot. You know what, I actually kind of liked it. I liked the riffs. And then we were given a weird single called Paralyzed. It's different, but it sounds like weird commercial hard rock. Well, it sounds like Barstool Warrior. It's actually a tasteful piece of old. This actually feels directly from Images and Words, and it has that more jazzy, dreamy vibe that that whole album had. The last 3 songs, 2 of them being great epic songs. Pale Blue Dot, which is the final song, is a pretty cool and different one. It's very dark and atmospheric in places, and my favorite goddamn song from the album. I would say the best song since maybe shit from Black Clouds. I'd say maybe even better than the best of times, At Wits, and a song that was lyrically made by James Labrie. But what really makes the song strong is the badass riffs in it and the amazing Dream Theater of old mixing with some Dream Theater of new, and it actually being successful this time around. A lot of people will agree that it's definitely a big step up over the Astonishing, and that it is a good thing that they're trying to strip things down, they're trying to do some different things while mixing in the good of old.
So the new Dream Theater album, which is called A View from the Top of the World, was a really fantastic project. It was done during the whole pandemic experience, which of course made everything more challenging. But what was really cool is when we got into the studio, we were all raring to go. I think being at home and lockdown made us feel like, oh my God, we gotta get out of here, we gotta make some music.
So it seems that Dream Theater pretty much continued this trend for a while of actually improving the sound and direction of the band and writing better music. With the album before this, Distance Over Time, as we saw, they finally were able to sound different, unique. It all came together on this album, A View from the Top of the World, which I feel is by far the strongest album with the Mike Mangini era. First of all, the songwriting massively improved. Even the weakest song on here is not bad. And there's honestly a lot of absolute bangers on here, and some of the heaviest goddamn songs and riffs they've ever done, like Awaken the Master. And the opening track, which they actually won a Grammy for, The Alien, is awesome and has some really cool singing from James while the band is just going apeshit the entire time. But of course, the one song we all gotta talk about is the progressive, super long 20-minute suite at the end of the album. It's just, you know, Dream Theater does that all the goddamn time. This time around, though, very strong, especially when it gets to the end of the song, when it feels like maybe it's losing momentum. And then out of fucking nowhere, Petrucci comes in with one of the heaviest, most killer guitar riffs I've ever heard, and I'm not even over-exaggerating here. This shit ripped my head off when I was listening to it in the car for the first time, driving across state. What a strong album. Mike Mangini and the boys in this lineup proved themselves. But as we all know, all classic lineups must reunite if the members are still alive.
The reality is, if you look at our ages, and you know, it probably is the final act. It probably is Act 3 for
And, there's really no better place that I should be spending it than with where it all began with my brothers and in Dream Theater. We formed that band when I was in college. The three of us formed it in college as teenagers. It really, it's poetic justice that we should ride off into the sunset together and end it together as well.
Parasomnia being a term that encompasses all sorts of sleep disturbances and disorders. So every song on the album is about some kind of parasomnia event, whether it be sleep deprivation or night terrors or sleep paralysis or things of that nature.
To be completely honest, even though the fact that this original video was so unbelievably overlong for no reason, and had a somewhat outdated, super long rant comparing Mike Mangini and Mike Portnoy, which is now completely outdated by the fact that Mike Portnoy is back, and the second he came back, everyone was in like absolute mass applause, and there was no more criticisms of Mike Portnoy, proving every single thing I said in my original rant right. It's pointless. I basically said Mike Portnoy was the super strong songwriter that was keeping them together and being a great leader all throughout the years, and how important he was beginning to end, as we all know. And so many Mike Mangini era defenders and shills would try to ignore all that and just say, well, he's so much technically better. And Mike Mangini is a great drummer, as we all know, but Mike Portnoy, we all went crazy when we heard the news that he was finally coming back to the band. We all knew this reunion was going to happen, even though there was some tension between James and Mike for a while. With the Liquid Tension experiment reuniting, you just knew that because Jordan and John were cool with Mike again, that it was only time that something happened. And a chance reunion where Mike showed up to a Dream Theater show, everything, all their problems went away.
Mike had come out to see the show and had asked if I'd be willing to see him and get together and just have some kind of a mending of the wounds, so to speak. And at first it was a little startling because it came out of nowhere, and Mike and I hadn't spoken, well, at that point, it would have been close to 11-12 years. So it was, the whole situation, it was very calm. It was very emotional, because as we looked at one another, and we hadn't been in physical presence of one another for so many years, within 30 seconds we embraced one another, said, hey, I love you, man. And then we went into my dressing room and we talked for about 20 minutes, and we kind of like a catharsis, right? Let's just cleanse this and rid ourselves of all these demons, so to speak, or monkeys on our back, and let's move on and let's stop the bullshit and the soap opera and all this crap that we're saying about one another.
It was so shocking and awesome that I just knew that I would have to fix up this video and come back and add this addendum with these new albums. And not only was A View from the Top of the World really strong and would have been a nice album to kind of end on with this era, they just couldn't help themselves to even top that. You got Mike Portnoy back in the mix, and all the little problems that they were having with his absence are now suddenly gone, and even some of the problems that they had with him being around are gone. All the overbearing backing vocals are completely absent, but all the James Labrie vocal performances seem way better because Mike, the producer, is back in the chair, making sure that James gives an awesome vocal performance. Where do we even start with this album? First of all, it is just as strong, if not better, than some of the albums of the glory days, coming out with some absolute bangers right out of the gate, but introducing elements of doom metal, which was awesome to hear, with Night Terrors being one of the strongest songs on here. And then absolutely, I was blown away by Midnight Messiah, which just brought up the intensity and heavy-ass riffings to the forefront.
Midnight Messiah.
And what's great about the comeback after the Astonishing is that John Petrucci really did realize, like, you know what? We're a progressive metal band. So why the hell aren't we just doubling down on the heavy-ass guitar riffs and being a metal band? Every song is awesome on here, which we haven't had in a while from the band, this amount of consistency. We have the song Dead Asleep, which is awesome, about someone waking up to their significant other being dead, and they're covered in blood. You think, oh my god, did I just do this? I was dead asleep, I was sleepwalking. But of course, we gotta talk about the 20-minute suite at the end of the album. Our boy, our main man, the Shadow Man incident. Once the riffs start cranking in, which almost feel like Merciful Fate at points with the noodling going on, and James is actually kicking ass, this thing is great. And the best part of it is towards the end when they do instrumental sections, and it kind of feels like that song In the Name of God off Train of Thought, where the band is almost playing like a Phrygian funky kind of section, where Jordan just goes insane on the piano. I am personally extremely satisfied with this album, and I know all of you are too. It's getting great reviews. So it just shows that we, the Mike Portnoy shills, were right, and you Mike Mangini era dick riders were wrong. No matter how good he was, Mike Portnoy was the man. He was the best member of the band, and it feels complete again. So what's next for Dream Theater, you ask, you stupid little metal peckin'? Well, you know what? I have a bit of a theory as to what the band is going to do next, other than tour forever, obviously. Is that the album has a lot of weird clock sounds, of course. I mean, it is about sleeping and whatnot. But at the end of the album, you hear a clock ring, and then you hear a voice say, "Wake up," that sounds a lot like that guy from Metropolis Part 2 telling Nicholas to wake up. I wonder if these ears are going to hear Metropolis Part 3 in a couple of years.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.
No!